Welcome back, everyone, to The Feeding Frenzy. The Feeding Frenzy is a boost of signal in the noise that is the internet. In each episode, you can expect four things. You can expect something worth listening to, something worth watching, something worth reading, and last but not least, something worth thinking about. The podcast worth listening to this week is with astronaut Steve Smith. And the title of the actual episode is Steve Smith on Lessons from Outer Space and a Near-Death Experience from Finding Mastery. If you're a longtime reader / listener, I've talked a lot about the Finding Mastery podcast and the people behind it. Just some preamble here, it is hosted by sports performance psychologist Michael Gervais. And he is all about finding the frameworks, the mental frameworks and toolkits that people use to excel and perform at their best. And naturally, I love that. So with this one, Steve Smith, who is he? He is one of America's most experienced astronauts and spacewalkers, with 4 space flights and 7 spacewalks to repair the Hubble Space Telescope. What I took away from this episode was the approach to leading a simple life, trying to find as little of distraction or just being in somewhat stoic sense, and also the articulation of how it seems that astronauts are able to disconnect themselves from the daily issues of the world and kind of have a larger appreciation for what it means to live on Earth as a species. And it's not something, obviously, many of us even have an idea to articulate with. But I think it's one of those things that if you actually choose to consider it, it provides a lot more value and, I mean, to put it frankly, the useless banker that goes around on many places, including the internet. Moving on to worth reading. So this section is a little bit different this week. I recently got back from a trip to Nashville, and I haven't had much time to go through photos and kind of think about what I experienced, but I wanted to share some of it here. So the first thing is I got to visit the Nashville Parthenon. The Parthenon is an exact replica of the Parthenon in Greece, in Athens specifically. And so I'm just going to read a little bit here so you guys can get a feel for it, and I'll also have some pictures that I'll show as well. The Parthenon in Nashville is the world's only exact size and detailed replica of the original temple in Athens, Greece. So when Tennessee celebrated its 100th year of statehood with the Tennessee Centennial Exposition, Nashville took advantage of its nickname, Athens of the South, and built an art building as a copy of Athens' most famous building and the epitome of classical Greek architecture. Initially, the Parthenon was planned to be temporary, but the community enjoyed it so much that a permanent replica was started in the 1920s, and the final interior was not completed until 2002, and which houses a 42-foot statue of Athena gilded in gold. And walking into the main room was honestly breathtaking. I hadn't expected what I was going to see in the main chamber, and to walk in and seeing all the lights reflecting the gold from Athena was really special. And it's one of those things that I really took away from my trip to Nashville that I wasn't expecting at all. And after reading the book Immortality Key, this was a treat for me. And just kind of being able to soak in the older architecture and the classical Greek style, which is just, to me, it's really interesting. And I find it very thought-provoking to just see the amount of respect they put in their buildings, because of it just takes so long to put all this effort in to make something beautiful and artistic and housing the idols you want to represent. So it was really cool for that. And so the second thing worth reading this week is also related to the Nashville Parthenon, and it's I'm going to butcher this probably, but here we go. It's the Antikythera mechanism, and it's the replica of it. So in the Parthenon, they have a hallway that is dedicated to the research that has been done on the Antikythera mechanism. Many people call it the first computer. That is a little misleading because it's the first analog computer. I found 2 articles, one from The Guardian and one from Nature, explaining what the device is, but from the Guardian article, it displayed the motion of the universe, predicting the movement of the 5 known planets, and the phases of the moon, and the solar and lunar eclipses. It's a really complicated machine that's over 2,000 years old, and somehow they were able to create it. It is incredibly complex, and we are still unlocking ways to understand it to this day. So if you want to learn more about the device, you can check out those 2 links. I will have some pictures of the replica that I took at the Nashville Parthenon. And again, also very fun little cherry on top of unexpected thing I got to see, because I hadn't expected to see this either. So another very cool facet of things you don't expect to find on your travels. Next up, worth watching. We have His Dark Materials from HBO, and I've linked the Rotten Tomatoes page as well. The story here is based on the author Philip Pullman's beloved trilogy. His Dark Materials follows Lyra, a brave young woman from another world. Lyra's quest to find her kidnapped friends leads her to uncover a sinister plot of a secret organization, encounter extraordinary beings, and protect dangerous secrets. I saw a few scenes of this show from VFX artists React from the Corridor crew. Specifically, they call attention to the animal modeling and the detailing the team put in to make the animals feel real, and also the detailing on their fur and how it interacts with cloth or shadow or light. And it just looks really well done. And some of the tricks they used for this was the puppets on set. So they were actually hand puppeted actually on set, so the actors could react more naturally to having a physical thing there than pretending there's something on screen. Like some shows will do just like tennis balls and say, this is just pretend it's whatever the thing that they're supposed to pretend it is. But they actually tried to go above and beyond, because it does 2 things: helps the actor act more naturally, and 2, when they get it in post, they have a better reference for the animators to go in and put the 3D model in and then reanimate it so that it matches more smoothly than otherwise the animators would just have to kind of guess how the creature would move. And that's really just artistry. So if you find anything like fantasy, if you're a fan of like Harry Potter or even Game of Thrones, I think you'd enjoy this story. And then last up, but not least, is worth pondering. And this is a quote for you to think about, and I'll leave it for you to ponder. This quote is from Brian Marescu from the Immortality Key, which I mentioned earlier, and I thought I'd share another quote since I mentioned it. People of reason may have to concede that modern science has its limits. Not everything of value can be weighed and measured. People of faith may have to admit that we can no longer afford legend over history or obedience over curiosity. And with that, everyone, thank you all for listening to or watching this edition of The Feeding Frenzy. And I will catch you all next time. And as always, you can find Feeding Curiosity podcast across the internet, or if you go to feedingcuriosity.net, you can find links to anything I mentioned here, or many other things, including blogs, podcasts, and other editions of The Feeding Frenzy. And with that, everyone, one more time, thank you all for watching and listening.